ancestral giants. Peace to gods and goddesses past, present, and future. Peace to kings, queens, and royal families all over. And peace to you, brothers and sisters. You tune into Oak 93.5 FM, Africans United, Know Thyself, Black Power Radio, where ancient wisdom meets modern truth with the Honorable Brother Ausar, man.
Anakasar, a BB4ODA, African liberation, black liberation, African power, black power. For every black man, woman, and child on the planet, we are the original people. I am the original man. I am a son of Africa. Peace to the listening audience.
And we have the Queen, Dr. Kimberly Muktarian.
Good morning, everyone. Just glad to be here. Know that we are looking to hear some very powerful truths that will help us in our journey, recover our legacy, and establish liberation.
Yeah, I'm Essence Divine, and today we concentrate on Pan-Africanism, the blueprint to African and Black power. Pan-Africanism is the unity of African people worldwide, on the continent and in the diaspora. As one family, we shared origin, struggle, and destiny. The word blueprint matters because power is not accidental. It's designed, built, and sustained through culture, tradition, and institutions. African and Black power begins from within through knowledge of self, values, and spirituality, then moves outward into community, economics, and politics. The central question is, what did we have before disruption? What was taken and what must be rebuilt? So, Brother Ausar, what are your thoughts on Pan-Africanism and why it's key to African and Black power?
Well, I think that first and foremost that, we give, thanks and gratitude, to all of our ancestors who fought for African liberation and, for our ancestors who brought the concept of Pan-Africanism into existence, right? And for all of our, great brothers and sisters who have fought, for liberation, for African people. Pan-Africanism is a concept where, wherever we are on this planet with African blood within us, that we work together as a whole. As you spoke about, as far as, we've had the same, struggles wherever we've been, just like, one of our great Pan-Africanists, Marcus Garvey said in the early 1920s, wherever he went, that we were in the same condition. And that's why, he started his Pan-African movement, the UNIA, with a Back to Africa movement, first and foremost to get our minds back, to where it was before of all of the atrocities that we had to face, through the knowledge of self and understanding our culture, understanding our history, and understanding our greatness, right? Pan-Africanism is important because it's a strategic plan. And I think that is something that we really had to do in the fight for liberation, is be strategic. And there's been some strategic moves in the Pan-African movement, over the where it's been going on for decades. But over the last few months, like with Ghana's president, John Mahama, and the submission of the transatlantic slave trade as being the gravest crime against humanity, and how it was approved through 123 votes at the United Nations, right? So it's Pan-Africanism, and this is a Pan-African movement when we're talking about reparations, because it wasn't just about getting the transatlantic slave trade acknowledged as the gravest crime against humanity, but it's also wherein that we're going to get retribution and compensation for all of the wrongs that was done against us. And I think that's why, Pan-Africanism is so important, because it gives us a collective power. And if we're going to get any type of reparations, we're going to have to develop our power in a strategic way so that we can receive what's rightfully ours. And at the same time, continue to fight for the liberation wherever we are on the planet, to be able to take control and have sovereignty, of our own countries in Africa and our own resources in Africa. And also in the diaspora, I think it's important, Pan-Africanism, for us to be able to connect with our brothers and sisters, in the Caribbean, our brothers and sisters on the continent, and our brothers and sisters wherever we are on this planet, and have, like, you had stated earlier, a common destiny. And that destiny has got to be a destiny of liberation and power. And having a Pan-African consciousness will help to lead us to the path to liberation and power.
I think that is important because we're gonna need everybody around the continent and the diaspora to continue for trades,
Right.
trading, and just for the continue to hold power. Dr. Kim, how you feel about Pan-Africanism and why it's key to African and Black power?
Well, I think it heals the origins of the atrocity. It is the remedy and the blueprint. If we talk about history, we look at how the transatlantic slave trade did not just affect us when it transitioned us over to North America, but many of our African fellowmen were dropped off all across the globe. And because of it, we have a duty to heal, repair, and restore what is lost financially wherever we stand. And, if we never go back to motherland, the land itself, we deserve to be healed wherever we stand. We deserve repair wherever we stand. And that blueprint is Pan-Africanism. And so it's not just one of us that are hurting and affected. Right. It is who we are across the board. So I believe Pan-Africanism is the route that we must take in order for us to regain what was lost.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know that a high percentage of the Africans in the transatlantic slave trade was distributed into the West Indies islands and South American islands and all across the globe, as you just spoke.
Yes.
So what makes Pan-Africanism more than a political idea and more of a way of life?
Well, I also believe that, when we talk about Pan-Africanism, we're also talking about restoring us back to who we were before we were interrupted or disrupted. And so that's the question. Who were we before? And was our way of life worthy of being upheld across the globe? And it was, because we were the first astrologers. We were the first people of medicine. We were the original people, the original civilization. And others came and adopted, stole, and duplicated our work, and actually built upon the foundations of much of the work we already established. So then why would we not go back to a way of life where where we simply start afresh, but we go back? And when we are repaired, it gives us the space to expand intellectually, not just our body, but our mind.
Oh, nice. Brother Ausar, how can this vision be made practical in everyday community building?
That's a great question because, first, Pan-Africanism, what it does is it helps us, to connect the dots because, a lot of the focus is on history, what has happened historically. And not only, am I talking about the negative things as far as like the transatlantic slave trade, but all of the great things, like Dr. Kim was just saying that we were able to do, like Imhotep, the father of medicine. So it's a lot of connecting the dots when you're talking about Pan-Africanism, you're talking about history. Then you're talking about culture, right? Culture and community. And, Dr. Malana Karenga, under his Kawita philosophy, culture and community are the twin pillars of our philosophy and practice, right? Focusing, on culture and community at the same time. Mm-hmm. So how they work hand in hand, right? High value cultural views, right? Like, for one, when we're talking about Shetawat Netta, because culture is based off of tradition, right? So when we're talking about culture, we're talking about things that our ancestors have done in the past that has proven to help with our continual biological existence and also the best of what we've been able to do, right? So it's important for us not to accept a subculture, but to understand our true culture. And that's why it's so important when we're talking about Pan-Africanism, because what it does, it gives us a chance to work on important issues like reparations, and at the same time start to work with our brothers and sisters as far as shaping our minds in an African-centered way and having an African-centered consciousness, which is going to give us power. And that comes from knowing our culture, right? So basically it's important for us to know that we are suffering from a cultural crisis because a lot of times we don't know our culture. So it's going to take a cultural revolution to overcome the dominant society's culture, which doesn't benefit us. What it does, it targets us. But what happens, unfortunately, is though we start to accept a culture that doesn't belong to us, and what it does, it hinders us and prevents us from reaching our true potential, not only as individuals, but as a collective whole. And that's why Pan-Africanism is so important, because it's all inclusive when it comes to African people and when it comes to our culture and when it comes to our community.
Yeah. You were speaking on the history, and the foundation of the blueprint is part of it is the history. Yes. So you got to think about early African civilizations, which includes Kemet, Kush, Aksum, Ghana, Mali, the Great Zimbabwe, and Africans made major contributions like to mathematics, medicine, astronomy, astrology, also like Dr. Kim was just speaking, architect, agriculture, governance, and then the Ma'afa. First of all, Ma'afa, let me say Ma'afa, which means a great disaster or a terrible tragedy, and that's in Swahili. The transatlantic slave trade and colonization disrupted, which is a Ma'afa, and this disrupted lineage, language, land, and memory. And resistance has always existed. The Haitian Revolution, slave results, anti-colonial movements. So the Pan-African tradition was shaped by figures such as who you mentioned earlier, Marcus Garvey, the great Martin Delany, Edward Wilmot Bladden, Henry Sylvester Williams, W.E.B. Du Bois, Kwame Nkrumah, Jomo Kenyatta, Malcolm X, Kwame Ture, many more. The lesson is clear. Each generation builds on the last, so history is instruction. And it's not just nostalgia. So, Dr. Kim, why is historical knowledge essential to building the blueprint for liberation and power?
Well, I think there is a saying that says, if you don't learn from history, you're doomed to repeat it. Mm-hmm. And I think that we can't afford to repeat any of the atrocities that we've already gone through. History also liberates us because it tells us who we were before the enslavement or the capturing of a people. It restores pride. It restores the ability to be self-sufficient. And it picks up where we actually left off. Because our history is not just enslavement or bondage. It is brilliance, it's intellectualism. And that is what has to be restored back to that has to be restored back to our community mentally. Mm-hmm. Because we're going through decades and even centuries of believing that we have to depend on somebody else just to be successful or adopt cultures that are not even ours. So it is incumbent upon us to have history so that we can understand who we were. And that goes back to self-knowledge, or who are you? Who were we as a people beforehand? And that is the first place of liberation, is to know thyself.
Yes.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Go ahead, brother. So,
no, that could you ask that question again?
Why is historical knowledge essential to building a blueprint for liberation and power?
Yes, history. History is everything, and all of those great revolutionary leaders that you spoke on, exemplified, their knowledge when it comes to history, the things that have been done to us, and basically, the solution to a lot of our problems. And, as a lot of times what our great revolutionaries teach is the first thing that we have to transform is our minds because of what has happened
Yes.
to us. Not because something is wrong with our minds, because something is just wrong with our minds. No. There's a reason. It's a historical reason why, like Dr. Amos Wilson always said, we have to be out of our minds to be in the position that we're in. And one of the reasons he said that is because the same way that our minds will turn, we can turn our minds back through an Africa-centered consciousness. And that's what a lot of the great leaders that you basically spoke on taught, right? From a historical perspective. It's also important to understand history because it helps us to understand not only our greatness and what we're able to do, because that gives us confidence and that lets us know if our ancestors were able to do it, we can do it because we are our ancestors, right? But it also helps us to prepare against an enemy that is nonstop in its attack on African life, on black life. And, we're still experiencing, a lot of issues as far as dealing with, the so-called dominant society. And when they basically, attack a black child, kill a black child, kill a black adult, black woman, black man, and how they always try to sweep it up under the rug and get away with it. And we receive no justice. And then we have to fight for things basically that we don't have to fight. That's just a ploy to keep power and control over the people where we get no justice. It's a psychological thing more than anything, just like in the Constitution when they labeled us as 3/5 of a man. A lot of things are psychological, right? And it's important for us to understand it. That's why in the Pan-African movement, it's so important for us to be strategic, right? And more than anything, not get so emotional about what the enemy does because we understand the enemy's history, of brutality and murder and thievery and everything else that they've done. So there's no need to get surprised when they try to sweep things up under the rug because it's not the first time that they've done it, right? So in number 10, in our principles, right, have the ability to distinguish the real from the unreal. That's so important. Right, so when we can deal with reality and then we can deal with the things that we need to do in order to come out of the position that we're in, and then we had basically examples of like what we always talk about, what happened in Tulsa, what happened in Wilmington, where we come together as a people and we build up and we show our excellence and then our enemies get mad and they come and they start destroying what we built. So we have to learn from that as well, right? And we have to also understand that not only are we at war, but we've been at war, right? And it's important to understand, like the great philosopher Sun Tzu said, that, right, the basic thing in war is life and death, the first principle, right? And we have to live. And we've shown that we've had the ability to continue to live throughout all the atrocities.
I like to say all the time, we resilient people.
Oh yeah.
So
I think the world. I don't think the world would be anymore if there wasn't any black people on the planet.
It would be an interesting place to be in. It would definitely not have any salt and pepper.
I don't think the world would survive. There's a reason for our thinking like that too. For the reason I think like that.
That's very profound that you would say that, Brother Ausar. I was listening to I probably scroll through these little reels or short little videos, and someone was saying the same thing. Well, I picked it up last week on what they really wouldn't know what to do with themselves if they didn't have us. First of all, this concept that you have to be over somebody, you have to dominate, you have to rule. But also, our culture brings, and I don't even want to say culture, because we have certain dispositions that are already predetermined in our DNA,
Right.
from the rhythm to the, just the dynamics of who we are. We bring that to society. And whether you make it a formal culture or not, I could stand out in the middle of nowhere or amongst no black people and still be who I am. So I don't actually need a culture as much as I can just say I'm defined. My DNA is defined already, regardless of who I'm with. And I think wherever we are, we just express that entity that we have been so gracefully given by the Creator. And sometimes I believe that is what makes our enemies. That is a very strong component, that just being who you are is a form of intimidation to someone else, whether you want it to be or not. You don't even have to even acknowledge that you have it, and it still can be intimidating to. And it's amazing that who you are can not only be intimidating, but it can cause a whole race of people to begin building an entire society that says, I hate you, whether it be in healthcare, whether it be in, you have to sit in the front or in the back. I mean, just, if we look back historically at this country alone and look at how things are shaping, then this can no longer be, us being resilient can no longer be the answer. Because what we're also saying is that we are willing to take the abuse. I think sometimes in our being resilient, we sort of marvel at our own strength without saying that this is unacceptable. And that is where we need to be. Allowing certain mental health to run amok for centuries is unacceptable. And even adopting some of the mechanisms that are used in society to sort of not eradicate it, but to curb behaviors. See, after a while, you start telling yourself, and I think that's where we are now with this, the question of how long do we allow certain entities to perform or behave in this manner, and we just sort of go along with it. I hear so many people say, oh, well, the next 4 years, we're going to, and I'm thinking, like, this not acceptable for 4 days, let alone 4 years. Have we taken a true account of the damages that are done over time? Brother Ausar said much of this is psychological. Are we okay with being bombarded psychologically in this manner every day, all day? And the answer is no. We should not be okay. Nor should we say that we are a part of anything that deliberately abuses us mentally and then abuses us physically. At some point, we have to say this is not who we are, nor do we want to be a part of that.
I think that scares the enemy quite a bit, because they like, we done did so much, and these people still thrive with confidence on their face and a smile. So which historical lessons do you believe are most important for our younger generation?
Well, I think that that the fight is not over. The war is not over until we win, and we have not won. A lot of time we like to, and we should, celebrate our greats and our accomplishments and things of that nature. But, at the end of the day, dealing with reality, they still kicking our head in, because they're still killing our children. They're still basically got the school to prison pipeline, mass incarceration, the poor health care, the poverty. We have to be honest about the situation, right? And we got to understand that that's just the culture of this country, is to dominate Anybody from any black person, any African, whether they was born here in North America or born on the continent, and that's to mistreat us, right? Because as soon when people say they don't see color, that's the first thing they see. It's color. How can you not see it if it's right there in your face, right? I see color when I look at you. You see color. It's the colorless ones who basically we need to be worried about and talking about, and not those of us who they say people of color. When we are the ones who make up the 90% of the planet, right? And then they like to also say non-white people instead of why don't they say non-African people, right? So it's just a lot of things are psychological, and when we're in this country, we got to understand what this culture is built off of, which is thievery, which is murder, which is enslavement, which is just basically all kinds of atrocities, that they've been able to get away with, decade after decade without having to be held accountable for. So that's why it's so important for us to have these type of discussions and to wake up, and people are waking up. And I want to give a big shout out, to my mother and my father. I was speaking with my mother the other day, and she told me, she said, we waking up. She said, Kip, we waking up. And my mama 83 years old.
Oh,
and just to hear her say that made me feel good because she understand the steps that we have to make, the strategics as far as for true liberation, so that we don't have all of these, terrible things happening, to our children, our brothers and sisters, and just our people, not only here in the United States, but globally.
That's true.
And just waking up, that brings me to this point right now, because one of our knowledge of self is one of our most important, is our first power that we need. And to know that self is long associated with Kemetic culture. It reflects one of Africa's oldest directives. Identity must come from ideology, because no one can defend, build for, or love a self they do not know. Reclaiming names, lineage, story, restoring genealogy, oral history, and cultural literacy. I think George James with The Stolen Legacy. We've spoke on that plenty of times, but that's a great book. Carter G. Woodson's The Miseducation of the Negro exposes the damage of miseducation. African-centered education and rites of passage will help prepare our youth for life and leadership. Mental emancipation requires decolonizing the mind and freeing thought from inherited limitations. So, Brother Saul, do you agree that knowledge of self is the first power, and why?
Yes, without a doubt, because it's like Marcus Garvey said, a people without their history is like a tree without their roots, right? So when we're talking about the knowledge of self, we're talking about the root of our origins, the root of our history, our traditions, right? The things that we do, our philosophies. And, we have a lot of great, philosophies and psychology and principles and values and views that our ancestors were able to basically teach. So it's very, important that we all strive for the knowledge of self, because the knowledge of self is the greatest knowledge that we can have. And it's also important to understand that it helps to raise our consciousness, and consciousness is power. So when we're all operating on a high level of consciousness, a high frequency, understanding who we are, and then we understand the power that we have as being the original people on the planet Earth, and how that power was taken away from us, right? And what do we have to do to regain that power? And that's why we're having this discussion, Pan-Africanism, the blueprint for African and Black power, right? Because what Pan-Africanism does, it helps us to have these types of conversations where we're learning our culture, we're learning our history, and we're learning the value of the knowledge of self and the many components that are involved when we're talking about the knowledge of self and who we are. And one thing I want to say is when we're talking about the knowledge of self, we're talking about the knowledge of the spirit, and that we are spiritual people, right? We talk about humanity a lot because we're talking about the human form of man, the physical form, but it's also important to understand that the physical is also spirit because all is spirit.
Dr. Kim.
Well, yes, of course, knowledge of self. That is a very that's foundational. We can't get past knowing who we are because if not, we become what someone else created, and that is somewhat the blueprint of what we see today. If we go back to who we were, then we actually become creators and not imitators. And then we're not forced to assimilate. Now, what we also have to be mindful of is the power of protecting what we have. And, we have to look at what the enemy, how he dismantles who we are, removes. And, we've watched, and I think more and more now, like Mother said, we're waking up. Because sometimes you don't know how much you've lost until you lost it. You look back to grab it and it's gone. But we have to be very mindful of what we're losing along the way. Because when it's time for us to start, the fight, we have lost most of our arsenal and our history. So then we don't know where to start off when it's time for us to reestablish Kemet right where we are and those type of things. So, knowledge of self is important, but protecting who we are. I've heard in our own conversations just simple things like the rap culture or hip hop culture. What parts do we discard? Which parts do we? And everything is not art. Everything is not our art. And everything shouldn't be accepted. And I think that's the other portion. You can make it, but that doesn't mean we accept it.
That's right.
And so we have to have boundaries. We have to have protections before you make something that doesn't reflect who we really are. And that is what elders are for. Elders are there not to squash your dream, but to make sure that your dream is not built on a falsehood, and to perpetuate colonization. Because remember, and that is one of our topics, listening audience, we will be dealing with not just the music industry, but the amusement industry, because that's what it has become. Something that people get a kick and giggle off of while it seeks dead into our communities in so much that it shapes our families, our culture, our economics, whether our children are going to finish school because they think they can get a rap deal. We have a whole lot to address and a whole lot to protect. And that is why this is so important. Knowing yourself won't let you become somebody else.
I think that's very important what you said when you talked about the hip hop industry and rap industry because in the Kawita philosophy, one of the areas of culture that's focused on is creative production.
Okay.
In music, art, dance, and literature, and we want our creative productions to be something that's going to be African-centered and positive, right? That's going to benefit the culture and benefit the community and not bring it down. Right. And that's why I think it's so important that when we're, talking about the knowledge of self, that we're able to reach our young brothers and sisters and teach them these valuable things. That let's put out something that's going to uplift. Even when we're talking about literature, right? I remember a big thing basically when I first started getting locked up back in the 80s. A big thing was reading, the Donna Goins books. But then last time I was fortunate to start reading things like The Miseducation of the Negro. Right, by Carter G. Woodson,
sure.
And books of enlightenment, right? So it's not only important what we sing about, rap about, it's important what we rap about. And then we got dance, right? And it's important that we dance. And our young sisters, they can get down, they can jam. Right. But let's do it in a respectful manner, right? With your talent. right? And even, brothers, a lot of the brothers like to dance as well. And, it's a lot of movement and it's something that's natural, but it can be done in a respective way because I've seen it done in a respective way. So we have to get back control, over the arts, our music, our literature,
And our
our
lifestyle.
dance, our lifestyle. And it has to be based off of our divine principles like Maya, divine truth, justice, righteousness, balance, order, harmony, reciprocity. And the one thing, like Ptahotep, they say, think Maya, speak Maya, and do Maya. That way we put the philosophy into practice.
Yes. I mean, the arts is primarily just an expression of who we are. So then the bigger question is, who are we? And then what are we expressing to the rest of the world? So then what we really have to do is deal with the root of who we are and the standard that we hold. Else, so it don't come out in the music. It don't come out in our arts. It's a healthy display of who we are. It's a healthy expression. And don't get me wrong, arts is supposed to be diverse and to share the many facets as to who a person or a group of people are. But if who you are expresses, I'll say this, if what you're expressing is a degradation of your own self, then we also have a duty to clean it up.
Yes, indeed.
If you express it, then obviously you're telling me something is wrong because the arts is designed to express what is going on. There is no way that you should be left in that state. A couple of years from now, we shouldn't be all rapping about nobody having dads. Somebody needs to have a political. It should all flow together. Politics, economics, all of these things should. If you're still talking about you robbing people in your song, then the political class or the economic class should be addressing, or the social and mental health class of our society or of our people should be listening and saying that's not right. That's not how it should be. What plan do we have to address what she just said? Because many of our young people can't find that they don't express very well person to person or just in conversation, but they will package it in a song and sing it all day. The problem we also have is that you express it and then you get paid to keep the pain and never want to be healed. That's a problem. That you make more money sharing the pain, so then nobody wants to get healed. Every song now reflects the pain, and then nobody comes up with a plan to heal you. That is a problem. If you can get paid to shoot somebody, or you get, in our diaspora now, if you the more wrong you do, the more you get paid, the more you sing about it. It's almost looking at a reverse of Miami Vice video, where you get more points if you become more atrocious on the game. We cannot allow that in our real society. And those are some of the things that we have to collectively, because do know that the black community is the number one ongoing power of entertainment across the world. Our trend is what every culture wants. And they look at it as swagger, like us talking about they want to do our dances, they want to do our songs, they want to imitate our dress, but they don't understand the pain. And so they'll take that and sensationalize everything else and won't address the real issues. That's our job. You can mimic the clothes, you can mimic the sound, but you can't mimic the pain. And it is our job to heal each other. It's not even the job of white America to repair. We have to take our repair back.
That's facts.
If we waited on them to repair us, we'll never get it.
That's facts. And they use the amusement
The amusement
world to shape this subculture of ours right now, and this is what disconnects us from ourselves quite a bit. So so how can young people begin the process of knowing their true selves? With so much
By coming to one of the classes that you teach at KCSSU,
Yeah, that's a dope.
that's a great way of learning because I was talking to a sister the other day and she was asking me some questions about KCSSU, and I was telling her we like to begin with Maya, truth, justice, and righteousness as our foundation, and then we teach them the 10 virtues of an initiate. Control your thoughts, control your actions, steadfastness in purpose, have faith in your teacher's ability to lead you on the path of truth, have faith in your ability to act to accept the truth, have the ability to act with wisdom, freedom from resentment under the act of persecution, freedom from resentment under the experience of being wrong, have the ability to distinguish right from wrong, and have the ability to distinguish the real from the unreal. Those are some very high values and principles and virtues to teach young children. But basically, there's teachings within the teachings. Like the first one, control your thoughts. Let's let them thoughts be African-centered thoughts based off of Maya, right? Where we're weighing our thoughts and we're weighing our actions, right? But first we have to control our thoughts before we can control our actions. So that's one of the things that we basically, like to start with as far as teaching children the knowledge of self. Of course, teaching them our origin, Africa. A lot of the children are very surprised when I ask the question, or when we ask the question, who was the original man? And they don't know that black people were. That we the original man. Sometimes they think it was the Europeans until we show them, in our PowerPoint presentations and through our teachings. So there are just so many things, and I told the sister, we got so much information, so much knowledge, so many great authors, historians, scholars, revolutionaries that we have enough information where we can teach for 1,000,000 years. That's just how vast the knowledge is coming from our ancestors and coming from Africa.
We also teach on meditation.
Oh my!
So that's a form of giving them how to control their thoughts
and breath.
And
yes.
breath, yeah. And breath is connected with the thoughts, with the mind. So and another thing that we don't understand is about what you're speaking on just a few minutes ago about the spirituality, about how spirit, like the human form, these fleshy garbs will pass away, but that spirit will live on forever.
It's true.
So we don't understand spirituality. So the African spiritual system, it's a way of life and systems of knowledge, and it's not a superstition. So traditions such as Kemetic spirituality, Ifa or Orisha, those are probably one and the same. Vodun, Akan cosmology, ancestral veneration carry deep philosophical meaning. Ma'at represents, you states Ma'at all the time. Ma'at represents truth, justice, harmony, balance, order, reciprocity, and righteousness. It also has 42 declarations of innocence, which reflects on early ethical codes. Honoring ancestors provides your guidance, accountability, and continuity. Spirituality should strengthen struggle and not replace action. There is value in finding African thread across African spiritual systems. Dr. Kim, let me ask you, why is spirituality important in the fight for liberation and Black power?
Well, I think spirituality is the foundation for humanity. And blacks are the origins of civilization. So if we get it right, the rest of the world will get it right. Civilization itself depended upon us. And so spirituality is not from without. It's not what we're looking at on the outside. It's who we are from the inside out. Knowing thyself is not knowing what's around you. It's knowing who you are from within. And teaching our young people how to go back and listen from within. Because right now, they are mesmerized or amused at what's going on around. The guns, the cars, the stolen, everything that's affecting them now is from the outside. Spirituality focuses on the inside, and then you put everything else in its proper perspective. And we have to go back to that. And our institutions of spirituality is what we call church, that was supposed to teach our people how to, thank you so much, Steve, It was supposed to teach humanity how to become more spiritual minded than earthly minded. And the reason why we have so many human atrocities is because everybody's grabbing for outward things. And that can hold people in bondage for centuries. When we teach humans how to look in, then we don't have the atrocities that we see without. And that's what spirituality is.
It make a lot of sense to me because all this material stuff will. I mean, it changes. Trends changing like every so often, real, all the time. And we still try to hold on. Then we'll go grab at the next one once it does change. Brother Saw,
Yeah,
add on.
yes. Spirituality is, like Dr. Kim said, that's our foundation, right? Because we are spirit.
Yes.
We learn the knowledge of self. We understand we are spirit. But I also think it's important for us to look at reality and understand that, I think our spirituality has hurt us in the past because of others' lack of spirituality. And others have basically taken and used religion, which is supposed to be spiritual, as a tool for world domination, power, and control, right? And so I think, because, more people have been killed in religious wars than anything else. And the two most dominant, religions on this planet, Christianity and Islam, has killed more people than anybody, and they're still killing, right? So I think that we cannot get it mixed up when we're talking about spirituality in religion, but when we're talking about, our original spirituality as African people, it was about getting in tune with ourselves, getting in tune with nature, getting in tune with the universe, and getting in tune with humanity, right? And others came and they learned from us, and that's why we was able to thrive, for tens of thousands of years because of our spirituality. But at the same time, we had virtues and values because we understood that it was a challenge, because we're living in a world of duality, good and bad, tall and short, big and small. So we had to find the balance, and that's why when we're talking about Maya, we're talking about being balanced. The scales of Maya, the heart is light as the feather in order for us to transition to the next realm of consciousness, right? The next part of the journey of the soul. So spirituality is very deep in our African-centered way of life. But one thing that I know, and this is why history is so important, right? We got to really understand the invasions of Africa and what they was able to do and how they was able to get in the position that they're in. And that's why I made the statement. And it may seem like it's negative when I say that our spirituality might hurt us sometimes because of, like in our principles, freedom from resentment under the act of persecution. I think sometimes we have to rethink some of them things when we're dealing with an enemy that has been so hard on us for so long.
Well, I want to also say, Brother Ausar, it definitely can hurt us and I don't know if I would even refer to spirituality if it no longer becomes spirituality to me, because spiritual things are supposed to be healthy. But indoctrination using a religion, and like you said, religion and spirituality are not one and the same. You can have several religions and not be spiritual at all. And having a religion don't make you spiritual. Because, at the end of the day, no spirituality should put your brother in bondage.
Right.
Spirituality is supposed to level the liberate and level the playing field, or level it where everybody is taken care of. Because that, as you become more spiritual, you understand that the more you understand is that none of this stuff belongs to none of us. Like, we're all here, and we only use it for the time being that we're here. The air, the sun, all these things that will be left here behind are just some things that have been graced to us by the Creator, so that we can use to live, and then leave it all here. I've never appreciated the scrap metal yard until I understood what it was to go and drop off my scraps. And at first, I just thought, well, I'm going to get some money back from dropping off my old aluminum microwave. And they said, no, ma'am, we'll be melting this down and it'll become something else later. So the things that we're fighting and purchasing now will outlast us much longer. You can't own something that outlasts you. I'm going to say it again. You can't own something that outlasts you.
Right.
So when you go to war over resources that are in the ground, know that you are fighting over something that will never belong to you. And I think spirituality helps us with that concept. That's why it's okay to give it away and share it, because it never belonged to you in the beginning. Spirituality is supposed to make sure we are more human than we are beast. When we start fighting over those resources, we become more beast-like than human.
Yeah, I like to add something because, I do a lot of meditating and, deep thinking, critical thinking. And, I listen to a lot of our great, brothers and sisters, scholars and historians, and we're always talking about humanity. And I might have mentioned this last week. We're always talking about humanity. And I think that, the rest of the world, the way they look at us, as if we're not worthy of being treated as humans when we're the original humans on this planet, right?
Right.
And I think that instead of us always trying to prove our humanity, not saying that they should prove their humanity to us, but I think we should question their humanity instead of trying to make them see us, like when we talk about equity and when we talk about equality. How are you going to be equal and expect equity from people
Thieves.
who openly oppress and
That's right.
exploit other people
That's good.
and don't have anything good, not only to say, but to contribute to people, but just want to dominate and control? So my thing is, where's their humanity?
That's
Why
right.
is it that we trying to prove our humanity? We have not been inhumane to any other people. They have been inhumane to us, and they're still being inhumane to us. So I think a lot of times when we get to talking about, and world peace is one of the things that we strive for. But I think our focus as African people should be more on securing our future and our biological existence,
Sure.
and not worry about the rest of the world when the rest of the world don't worry about us. I think we should focus on worrying about ourselves and protecting ourselves and building ourselves up. And that's why I really love Pan-Africanism, because Pan-Africanism, the focus is on all African people on the globe. And I think that until we get ourselves all the way together and become a global power, that should be our primary focus.
And I also say, Brother Ausar, we have to remember that self-preservation is the first law. So you can't help others if you don't protect yourself. We just can't stay there. I think a lot of times they're scared that we're going to be the same people as them, where we hoard all the resources, steal all the resources, and then we don't share. I don't think that that's in our DNA. Part of who we are as a people is one who shares anyway. And remember, just the continent of Africa alone tells us who we are and our relationship to God himself. If you look at how, and I bought my shirt, of all the resources that we were blessed with or endowed with in the continent, those are things that repeat or regenerate itself.
That's right.
So we have never really had to worry. We've never had to be thieves. We never had to be. So don't project that fear or image on us. We are giving people, and don't turn us into selfish, self-centered people that hoard all the stuff. That's your behaviors, and then you make us go into these places where we're so they out of their fear they threw the equilibrium off of humanity. don't turn us into you, because fear gets nothing done. I don't care how you cut it. So yes, wherever we stand is wherever we should benefit. However, know that as the motherland, we are the mother. And the mother has an umbilical cord to the whole world. You cannot find no place on this globe that our hands have not touched, influenced, or spoken. We're not afraid of being who we are. And nor are we afraid of them. They are afraid of us. And so they have to create this illusion that now you have to be included. You don't have to include me because my DNA is everywhere. So you understand? So, when we talk about they try to minimize or isolate our existence, no, our civilization spreads abroad, and we should never be ashamed of who we are. And in actuality, if we go back to and let me say this as a historian, I don't appreciate how the story is told, because when you look at history, you're supposed to go people, geography, language, and culture.
Right.
History is comprised of that. Geography first. If you were put any other place, then you would not say we were Africans. But we started out on not just a patch of land called Africa. We started out on Pangea. Oh boy. I said I was going to have to talk about it today. We did not start on a continent called Africa. Our civilization was on one continent. Before it was 7, it was 1. Pangea means 1. And so as it broke apart, the people also migrated other places, and it took our DNA with it. You cannot see anybody without us. When we say we are the original civilization, we were and we are. So you're going to see thousands upon 10,000s of our DNA across the board. This globe is not, Africa is not a continent. And Africa is an entire landmass whose DNA can be found in any human.
Every human.
Every human. And it will behoove them you don't have to still research like Henrietta, what is her name? And Henrietta, I'm going to get
her last name. Lex
or something. Yeah. You don't have to still research. Our love for humanity will give you the research. See, they've capitalized theft. They've legalized theft. Why wouldn't we want to give you cells that heal the world? You see what I'm saying? That is who we are. Not a culture created. We are the DNA of healing. We're not just healing. We are the DNA of wealth. And if it doesn't look like that, then there has been a sufficient amount of breakdown from an outside entity, almost like we didn't get immunized from hate. Everything that we are experiencing is from the outside in. We were spiritual when we were more spiritual than we were natural. We have to understand that as a people, we didn't glory in all this stuff because we were more spiritual than, and especially if you always had it, what you need to be engrossed with it for. You wake up and it's there. Who is Mansa Musa, who one of the greater kings who had all this wealth and just pretty much gave it away. And then the story goes that his enemies saw how generous he was and attacked him. Why would you attack somebody who would give it away anyway?
Agree, and that's
psychological.
Right.
Is that not, Brother Ausar? That is not. That's a whole foreign entity of having to deal. And like you said, it's time to address their humanity. If I give you something, why do you steal it?
I think Mansa Musa was the richest person that the world ever known, and
yes,
share alike. Something you said that I never thought about it that way. They might be afraid that we would treat them or treat the rest of humanity the same way that they've done humanity, and
But that comes from fear.
that could be a big fear.
And
So
psychological positioning.
Yes.
Because they like to position themselves psychological, right? It's just like when you're talking about, for one, inclusion, to be included with them, that puts them in a high position.
It's true.
Right?
Come
Just
on,
like
Brother
when you're talking about DEI, that puts them in a what? Superior position. So if you're always trying to reach their standard and they see you trying to reach their standard, they know that they're in a position,
That's right.
a superior position.
You better preach.
But if you don't look at them like that and you understand their inhumane ways and you understand that you have to oppose everything basically that is dishonest about them, all the injustices that they do, if we don't challenge and fight against the injustices that damage our people, what good are we?
That's true.
Right? We're no good to anybody.
Come on.
Right, our word means nothing
That's true.
if we can't put the knowledge that we have to use to protect our people, to protect our children, and to be able to teach our children the things that need to be taught. Right, so we have to really, understand that we can't let them put themselves in a psychological position where they feel like they're looking down at us, and we're always asking them to give us this or give us that. Just like the situation
It's
that's
true.
going on in Mississippi now with the young brother that was murdered, Nolan Wells. All that's about positioning.
Yes,
Right. They know
yes.
that them boys that he went out there with, they know they're guilty. They know that there are a lot of things basically that they don't want to come out in the open, because what they're trying to do is not only protect them three white boys, but they're trying to protect their position
That's true.
globally,
That's good.
the way everybody look at them.
That is so true. And it always amazes me that we're so, they throw these terms, DEI, and that we're supposed to fight to be included. Who would want to be included with thieves? I mean, at the end of the day, why are we fighting so hard to be included? They need to be tried. If you are that wicked at some point, they need to be dealt with, not to be included with, because then you become a co-conspirator of the criminals. And I think we're so willing to be with them. And remember, they cover all their criminality. They make all their crimes legal. So then we think that when we with them, all of what we do gets forgiven too or looked over. And we equate it to power. Look at our police departments. Look at almost we're talking about Raleigh. We're talking about Wake County. We're talking about black people who they put in these positions who know. We could talk about the atrocities of the 2-page document they admitted to. There's no accountability, no responsibility, no restitution attached to it at all. It's just, hey, sorry. And black people, look with the same sheet of paper that work for them, don't think nothing should be done beyond sorry. And they work for them. So then we have to really ask ourselves, what are we dealing with? And are we American, or who are we? Because I don't know if you should want to be
Right.
an American. I mean, come on. And history is important, I think, going back. Because if we talked about how this so-called country was established, it was built off of theft.
Americans have citizen rights, right? We really don't have citizen rights.
No.
Because, our rights can be violated at any point. And I think it's important, to bring up what Bob Marley said. You can't expect justice in a world where the criminals make the laws.
It's true.
And that's exactly what we got going on here.
It's true.
Not only here in the United States, but also globally, through the United Nations and things of that nature. So I think that, power is something that we have to have, as African people, as black people. And I think, like you had stated, Brother Escents, it starts with the knowledge of self, right? And we have to organize that knowledge and organize our consciousness. And we have to organize, like Kwame Ture said, in all areas of life, politically, socially, economically, educationally. We have to have organizations where we are able to come together, work together, and build the things that we need to build, and build not only a political party, right, globally, but political parties, right? So that when we do go to the United Nations, we have the power that we need to make things happen. And even if we have to develop our own type of United Nations with the 54 countries in Africa, we cannot limit ourselves in things that we can do. We cannot
That's
look
right.
at the United Nations as higher than us. We can't look at nobody as higher than us, because we the original people and we understand history and we understand the strategic, violent methods and measures that they took to put themselves in the position that they're in today, right? So it's going to take, some very strategic organizing and planning on our parts. And this is the unfortunate thing, right? And I get a little, I ain't gonna say upset, a little disturbed with a lot of things that I see that come from, some brothers and sisters, online that are basically paid in order to try to cause division amongst
true.
black people. We gotta expect that because we live in a universe of duality.
That's
right.
right.
So things ain't gonna always be, everybody ain't gonna always be with the
Kumbaya.
program.
Right.
But we have enough brothers and sisters that I have ran across that are really with the movement for liberation. And that's why I was happy when I heard my mother say, 83 years old, that we waking up, right? And for me to hear my mother say that, it felt so good. You know what I mean? Because she was born shortly after we were released from slavery,
Wow.
right? The early 1940s. And yet, here it is in 2026, and she is saying that we're waking up. And not only is she saying we're waking up, but she sees the need for us to wake up so that we can change the things basically that have been happening
That's
to us,
good. Woo.
since they brought us over here.
Thank you.
In chains.
Thank you for our elders acknowledging that they see the light and that they shouldn't have to close their eyes after experiencing
That's right.
so much injustice. They should not have, and we are honored that Mother has outlasted quite a bit of this injustice to a people and can live and tell about it, but also can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We are thankful for that because it also says that she was worthy to reap the fruits of her labor. A lot of our elders have experienced and have tilled the land and tilled for justice and stood by and hoped and waited and prayed. And so we're glad that she will be able to look at those fruits.
Yes.
Yeah. Before I move on, I want to say, state these couple of things about, a great book for spirituality. It would be from Ra'an Nafra Amen.
Yeah.
I hope I'm saying his name right.
Yeah.
But he has a great seven volume series of it's called Meta Netta. That's a great book, and the people who don't pick up books and read much, it's a movie called Sankofa. And
That was a good one.
Sankofa, it reminds us to return or recover what we once left behind. So I want to state that. And as we was talking about our values and ethics, because how you said it, Dr. Kim, they're afraid that we might
Turn on them
the same way
and inflict what they've inflicted upon us.
But
Yes.
if they pay attention, that we always talking about ma'at, which is truth, justice, balance.
Right.
You see where I'm going?
Absolutely.
Order. So our values and ethics are totally different.
Right.
But I challenge that. I challenge that because also within my because I told you I
reciprocity,
do a lot of things. Reciprocity, give and take. Sometimes you got to give what you taking, and it ain't gonna always be positive, right?
No.
And we got to wait. We got to be able to balance things, and we have to deal with the reality. We can't always be on the defense. Sometimes we got to be on the offense, especially if we know what's going to happen or see what's going to happen. We have to learn from the past, and we have to properly prepare ourselves at all times because we know the things that can happen because they're still happening today.
Yeah. And what I was getting to, because you're totally correct. because that is a part of my art also. But I didn't want to bring that part in because we got enough in our amusement system. We got enough
Right.
of that type of stuff going through our psyche. So I wanted to talk about our
That's
values,
good.
our
That's
good
good,
values
brother.
and
Yes.
ethics. You know, such as Ubuntu.
Right.
Did I say that one right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go through these, and I might, I'm gonna say them the way I say them anyway. Wise man once told me, don't get too caught up with the names, as long as you know what it's talking about.
Right.
So Ubuntu, which is I am because we are, is it reminds us that personhood is formal through community.
That's right.
And the Nguzo Saba offers a strong ethical base. Umoja, that represents togetherness.
Unity.
Unity, definitely. Kuja Kajulia,
Kuji Chagalia.
there you go. Kuji Chagalia,
Right.
that's self-determination. Ujima, collective work and responsibility. Ujama is on cooperative economics or familyhood. Nia, that's purpose. Kuwamba, creativity. Imani, that's faith. And we got to understand that Nugazu Saba means the 7 principles, and the 7 principles that I just went through, and this is the foundation of Kwanzaa also. So and as we stated, we already talked about Ma'ada and the functions of their daily ethics. And we got respect for elders, the responsibility across generations are essential. Integrity protects the whole community, while ethical failure in leadership weakens it. Accountability should be practical with love. So why is a strong moral framework so important in the quest for liberation and power?
Because it teaches us who we are, and it teaches us that, like you said, Ubuntu, I am because we are therefore I am, with the focus on the community and us working together as a community. And those 7 principles that you just spoke on in Nguzo Saba by Dr. Malana Karenga, they're also a foundation of Kawita philosophy.
Yeah.
How we had to have unity, we had to have self-determination, we had to have, cooperative economics, and we had to have, collective work and responsibility. We got to have creativity, unity, right? All the principles that basically you just spoke on, right? And also the moral structure that we have to have, where the knowledge of self helps us so much, because it helps us to understand the value of selfless service, giving freely to ourselves, giving freely to our community, right? Basically, we just got through talking about what? The Europeans and them being what? Greedy, avarice, selfish, right? We teach the qualities that are against those qualities. Those are basically what we consider isfit, the lower levels of consciousness, right? And what we want to deal with is the higher levels of consciousness,
That's right.
like Maya, right? So it's so important that we learn our moral values, our moral principles, like control your thoughts, control your actions, steadfastness and purpose, right? And also, the respect for elders, the respect for our sacred traditions, the respect for the divine, spirituality, the respect and honoring of nature, the protection of nature, the environment, the protection of our children, right? All these morals and values help to shape our consciousness in a way where it's going to be beneficial to all black people. It's like Ptahhotep said, teach the children of the great that which is useful to them.
So what happens to a movement when this moral foundation is weak? Dr. Kim?
Well, it's our job to refortify the foundations.
Right.
And that is where we are now, is that we can't expect our young people to fix themselves or even have a goal and a vision for themselves. That is the job of us to pass that down to them, and then to make sure that there is a pathway for them to get there. So, if they are hurting or broken in any way, I will blame every last one of those things on the generation that they have to come after. So, that they have to take the baton from. So, if we have not collectively come together to address those issues, then, of course, we're going to only get what we put in. And if we didn't put anything into our communities, or we didn't give them a platform or a vision to come after, then they don't see it. And let me just say this. Showing our children individually what we do is one thing, but showing our children collectively what we have is another. And the disconnect is the collective piece.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because we have parents that are showing their children the way. But the problem is not when they're in the house. It's when they go outside those walls and they're dealing with a community as a whole. So have we arrested what's going on in our communities and shut down what capitalism and colonialism have created? We have not arrested. Must be looking for RPD to arrest it, but they don't. That's how they get paid. They get paid off of our ignorance. So, and they're so diabolical in their operations, they don't even know what's going on and even if they did, they're not allowed to say anything because that is how their system is actually produced. It produces based off of our default. You can't have gentrification. You can't have rich white people coming in unless you have poor blacks. And you can't have poor blacks unless you help create poverty. Because we are a class of working people. So what did you do systematically so that you could come back and benefit off of it? Okay. So until we have those conversations, and mind you, that is reparations. Now I'm wrapping to that, but go ahead.
They want to keep us dependent on them.
That is correct.
Right. And they want us to think, like I said, it's a psychological position that they want to hold over us. They want us to think something is wrong with our children. Ain't nothing wrong with our children.
Ain't nothing wrong.
They want us to think something wrong with our parents. Ain't nothing wrong with our parents. Look at the resources. And look at the things where they keep the resources from us. They keep the opportunities from us. How we haven't had the same opportunities that they've had because of things like we talked about, redlining, right? So we got to look at all these obstacles that they put and all these barriers that they put in our place, and then they blame us when they create the problem, and then they say we're the problem. Then they act like they want to come in and help the problem, right? And it's just like basically, when we work, we work with children, right? Organizations that basically had the best interests of the children in the community at heart, they don't want to support them. No. Anytime you're talking about uplifting black children, that's the one thing they rather you uplift a black adult than a black child, because they don't want their child to grow up with the power that's going to be able to overthrow a corrupt government. That's why they don't support certain organizations, but they support organizations that are more assimilationist and integrationist and believe in, little black boys and little white boys holding hands and things of that nature, right? But what we have to understand is that's not good for us as a whole, as history has shown. That's why history is so important. So that's why it's important for us to get like-minded brothers and sisters and start building ourselves where we can build the institutions necessary for us to properly raise and educate our children. And that's why, a lot of our, African black brothers and sisters that are in positions to make a difference, right? You speak to them and you can just tell the energy that they give off that they're not with it, because they're not going to jeopardize the position that they have for any type of justice for black people, whether it's in the school system, whether it's in the criminal justice system, or whether it's in the healthcare. That's why they always like to put a black face on white supremacy.
It's true. That's good. And that's strategic. That's a form of war. Why would you put a black person in charge of white supremacy? You do that because you want to hold the power. And you'll correlate black with, you'll tell other black people, in order for you to be successful like him or her, then you have to go along with the program. Yeah. And that is why it doesn't work. Because
right.
that's if it was true DEI, most real black people wouldn't want to be a part of it because they don't want to be associated with something so corrupt. But what it tells you also is that when you say state or when you say federal government, you're really saying white supremacy.
Right.
It's not state, it's at a state level, but what you're saying is these funds are regulated by white supremacy. And you can't say inclusion or equity or what do you call that? Diversity, because we don't want that. And if we do, you have to play by our rules. And our rules is to stay in your place in order for you to work. And that is a form of abuse. That is a form of what would we call that? That in order for you to work for white supremacy, you must refrain from understanding or even asking for or acknowledging that there are any inequities. You can't even talk
Like
about
Colin Kaepernick did
right
with the
is
NFL.
right.
Yeah.
And he ain't played another down since.
Right,
Since he took
right.
that knee.
It's right, and here's the thing, and he received the settlement from the NFL for the lawsuit, but it also says that you can't come back. The problem is you have Brother Kaepernick after he sued them asking for his job back. You won't be getting your job back after you sue for millions of dollars. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that is not how things operate. For you to even want to be a part of a system that called you a son, get this son of a bee off of the field.
Yeah.
And the commissioner or the CEO of the NFL did not defend you.
That's right.
But you want to play for that league. It makes me think, and that is the other issue of colonization. It never allows you to be creative. When he said that to you, he said it to every black man. Again, do you all not see do you not have enough money to come together and make your own league? See, we have to think outside the box. But see, they've pitched to us that in order to succeed, you have to be included with us, no matter how
Right.
how bad the abuse is, how bad the disrespect is. You will willingly walk in and ask for your job back after they've abused you. They didn't change any policy. They didn't say they wouldn't use that language towards. There was no negotiation. You just got money and please get away. You're begging to be back on within an industry that don't even respect who you are as a human. Why would you want to be there?
I understand. You had I forget the three moguls, the music moguls that was talking about doing their own distribution company, but once they said that, then they was disassembled. I know Suge Knight was one of them, and he been incarcerated ever since.
Yes.
So what they show you is that, hey, you don't want to conform, then we'll just uplift another one. And then you get so many of our brothers, which I'll say the black faces on white supremacy. You get so many of them, they look at you and they like, hey, we made it through it, so you should be able to also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but.
And that is exactly what we see when we see our politicians. That's why they can't represent us,
Right.
because in order for them to have a political career, that means they have to disown their own.
That's right.
Terrible. So why is accountability, because we speaking of that, why will accountability be such an important part of ethics?
Because you don't have ethics without it. You don't have a standard without accountability. In order for someone to have ethics, it's a check and balance on your integrity.
Yeah.
And without the accountability from within and from without, you don't have a certain thing called ethics.
Okay.
We weigh it on the scales of Ma'at. We weigh the thoughts and the actions and the deeds against the feather of Ma'at. And your heart has to be just as light as that feather in order to go to the next realm of consciousness. And if your heavy is too hard, that means that you're not ready. That means that your values, your morals need to be refined, and you have to go through the process all over again. Accountability, it has to be accountability. And there has been no accountability in this country. Anytime
That's
that a
right.
country can admit that they enslaved the people, I don't care if it's for 1 hour, right? That is a crime against humanity.
That's right.
When you global traffic African people all over the world, that's a crime against humanity. We really need to dig deep into these crimes against humanity.
That is correct.
And the crimes that are still going on today. There's no accountability. No. That's why 27 countries from the European Union, they abstain from voting as far as the transatlantic slave trade being the gravest crime against humanity. The United States, along with Israel and Argentina, they said that it wasn't the gravest crime against humanity. So I don't know what the United States is looking at or if they really understand their history, and I think they do understand their history.
Oh, yeah, they do.
That's why they don't want to acknowledge it. That's
correct.
why we got to keep the pressure on, and we got to continue to develop power. That's why power is so important, because what power does, power changes things. And we have to have global power for all African people so that we can no longer be dominated by another people.
Right.
And as for the United States, their power is slipping globally so much that they can, but they didn't want to admit to so what they said, it was legal under international law. So they didn't want to admit to that, the way their power is slipping right now, the power of that dollar falling so much.
Right.
And that's where their power really stems from right now.
Yeah, we're about to crush their power. You know, it's so many things have gone on this year with our youth. Cyrus Belton, Carmelo Anthony, the baby Cole and Wiley.
Yes.
Now we got the brother Nolan Wells, the brother that was murdered in April in Dallas, Texas, who went with two of his friends to go swimming and fishing.
That's correct.
And now they've charged those two with murder. So this is just a play where they want to feel like they can continue to do the things that they've been doing. But like my mama said, we waking up, and we are waking up. We have to take advantage of this time in history. Like, we tried to do it with George Floyd when that happened. It was a global big kumbaya, everybody holding hands and having vigils, and then it died off. We can never let it die off. That's why institutions are so important. And that's why the knowledge of self is so important, where we can have institutions where we're teaching our children the values and principles, and teaching our adults the values and principles of unity, organizing, and being able to sustain ourselves. Notice, one thing, all this talk we've been talking, right? We never talk about hurting anyone, right? Because that's not our goal and that's not our objective.
Well said.
Our goal and objective is to uplift humanity, uplift our brothers and sisters. People look at that as being something bad because they look at you going against the established order, but we have to always challenge the established order of corruption.
That's true. And again, that's not who we are. So you can't make us be that, because that's who you are. As a people, we just aren't called to, slash everybody's throat, outside of the culture of fighting and being grotesque. We can see these patterns throughout the year. I mean, I have never seen a culture of people who love Halloween, and then if you're not watching Halloween on Halloween, then the rest of the year you're making movies where you cut up people and put them in the basement, and I those are just things. The rest of the 364 days out the year, and conquering other countries, and and that's okay with you. And then you come back and say it's spiritual to do that. It's Christian. We're defending Christianity. I'm thinking you're not defending anything spiritual. This is all barbaric. This is all inhumane. You can't justify it. There is not one war that I can see the Civil War was not even justifiable. 500,000 people because you want to keep slaves. There's nothing civil about that. And they brand it as a civil war. What made it civil?
I think that's important what you just said.
No, it is.
Especially with us being here in the South.
What?
They never wanted to give us freedom. I'm not going to say liberation because we're not liberated yet. We got a ways to go before we're liberated. But we're going to know when we're liberated, because when we're liberated, that means we're going to win this war, right?
That's right.
And it means that we're going to have power, right? Now, as far as those who we take the power from, and like you say, they losing their grip on their power, and they are. I don't know what they're going to do, but they're losing their grip, and that's why, it seems like these cases are just cases where we've seen them before, like Michael Brown, but and I know it was a different feel with George Floyd, but it's a really different feel.
Oh yeah, I
with
think,
this.
and you know what? I think from with George Floyd, it was somewhat a little. I will say that we somewhat allowed them to say we'll fix it.
Right.
On this end now, we're saying don't worry, we're gonna fix it.
Right.
We're not taking it no more.
Right.
Because when they fixed it, it went back to where it was from where it never was fixed. Right. It was just a facade. It's just a facade. Now we're saying, don't worry about it. If you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. But right now, we got it from here. Right. And we'll take care of it because this is unacceptable. Mm-hmm. And no, you hold the DEI. We'll deal with that letter because we don't need to be included with crazy anyway. We'll get by. We're going to be okay. So you can hold it off now. But know that what we're coming for is all of our resources, not just what you hand out as if you're giving crumbs from massa. You can't give me nothing that you already owe me. That's what I'm going to say. You can't throw what you owe because I'm coming for it. We'll fix it. We'll fix it this time. We don't need kumbaya. We don't need a march, pray, nothing. We're not going to tear up your buildings. We're just going to come on for our stuff. Right. And that's where Dr. Martin Luther King was. At the end of the fight, he said, I think I sent my people into a burning building. Whose building was we trying to get in? Theirs.
Building of integration.
The building of integration. And he knew from then, trying to do the kumbaya was not working. And so he figured if we're going to fix it, we're going to have to fix it right this time. Mm-hmm. So let's get it popping, I think they say. We
can run down this rabbit hole for all day. I got a couple more points I want to try to get to, but I wanted to say
please
about the 1-year-old that was killed. You see nothing about this at all anywhere. I don't know why that is, but you remember the 1-year-old?
Yeah, Cohen Wiley. Because it's all about, like I had stated before, psychological positioning. Mm-hmm. Right? They want to basically justify anything that they do. Right? His mother, they always going to accuse her of stealing. Yeah. They always want to criminalize black people, right? And whether you do it or not, just to throw it out there, they think that makes people think that it might have happened. But to shoot into a car that's leaving with occupants in it, right, is a crime in itself. Mm-hmm. And so we don't hear about these things like that because they're always trying to protect themselves, and they basically think that our lives are worthless, have no value. And that's why, I think that, like I say, where everything happened back to back to back, you talking about things happening April, May, June, and July with our youth. And y'all remember when we was at that that community meeting at Lions Park? Mm-hmm. That was May 11th. And that's the one thing I was talking about more than anything, criminalizing our children.
That's right.
Right? Trying to make our children's target. The black lady, the elderly black lady talking about, well, can we shoot the perpetrators? And then she said, that's not allowed, like it was something that was cute. But these things are serious business.
She was performing in front of the oppressor. Right. But like you said, brother, it's all to establish that we are the culprits of criminalization.
Right.
If you'll notice, when we talk about the 1-year-old baby, we still haven't heard the name of the officer who shot. Right. Never once has his picture come up, nor his name, which means they are protecting the perpetrator. Yeah. Because they still want to make us think that the real perpetrator is the mother.
That's right.
Right.
The only reason why they're giving any of this, the others, any kind of play, Nolan Wells, is because it is white children that are being accused. But even to them, they won't criminalize them either. You have not heard any names from any other way. You see the pictures, but you never see the names. That is how lynchings happen. We saw the black person lynched. We knew the name of the lynch. We never knew the names of the lynch mob, though they stood there with no mask on, standing right around the body. They will not release the identity of the perpetrators because they refuse to criminalize them. And if they do release it, it's from an honorable perspective. R.J. Reynolds and them were human traffickers, but his name is made honorable on the side of the Reynolds Coliseum. Right. So when they take their names, they whitewash who they really are, and then they post them and then have our children go and graduate from them. So they make them honorable and dismiss all of the atrocities. That's why Donald Trump, we all know 35,000 times his name is in the pedophile Epstein files. But he don't have a problem with sticking his name, his face, whatever. These are just absolutely mentally insane people. Who knows that you are a pedophile and put your name in the middle of John F. Kennedy's on you when black people commit those kind of atrocities, they don't want to be found. Come on. Right. They don't think that they deserve honor in the midst. That is a problem. And that is why Pan-African and the moral of the story is Pan-Africanism has to call us to high ethics.
Yes, indeed.
Because we have to be the model for other people.
Right. That's right. That's right.
And speaking of that, let's get some of our traditions, rites of passage, which mark birth, coming of age, marriage, eldership, and homegoing. Oral tradition, proverbs, storytelling, and the call and response preserve and transmit knowledge. The drum, the dance, the music function as language, memory, and resistance. Libations and ancestor remembrance keep continuity alive. Festivals like Kwanzaa, family reunions and harvest traditions strengthen communal bonds. The extended family model reflects the village principle where elders and relatives help raise the next generation. So, and Dr. Kim, how do you see any of these traditions in our culture and communities today?
Yes, absolutely. And those are the fragments and the pieces that we must hold on to.
There we go.
Family reunions, coming together, spiritual connections, all of those things make a difference in how we carry the next generation. And those are traditions that we've had for hundreds of years. We brought them with us from overseas, and they're not outdated. These are trends and practices that we cannot afford to lose.
That's right.
Because if not, our young people will only gather to do things that they're not supposed to.
Yeah. All of those are a big part of our culture and who we are as a people. Like Dr. Kim said, our traditions, right? And these are things that we have to keep going. I never forget growing up, I thought our family reunions were just the biggest and the best. Not that I had been to a lot, but that's just how much I enjoyed it. And like Dr. Kim said, we had to continue those things, right? As far as community ties, family ties, kith and kin, our whole community just coming together. And even like when, you was talking about, the dance and the art, which we spoke on, earlier, doing it in a way where it's, African center and uplifted. We are very creative in everything that we do. And that's why, people really love to imitate and emulate us and really admire us, even though they want to keep their foot on our neck. Absolutely. They want to keep us doing, like you said, amusing them. Right. Entertain them. They love us if they can see themselves over us and us performing for them. Right? But we're not, God didn't create us to perform for them. That's right. He created us the same reason why he created everyone, to be able to enjoy life and have a peaceful life and have purpose in life, right? We don't have to worry about diversity. The Creator made sure that there would be diversity on this planet. That's right. When we're talking about nature, when we're talking about people, talking about fish, anything that we're talking about. That's right. Right? There is diversity. But what is expected is for us to be able to live in peace. But we have not been able to live in peace because of others. So those are things that basically we have to work on and correct. And the first thing we have to do is, correct ourselves, raise our consciousness so that we no longer have to be at the bottom, but we can sit at the top where we can rule in a righteous and justifiable way.
That's right. Yes.
So
Absolutely.
our culture is our expression of power. Our culture is the immune system of our people, what protects identity from assimilation and erasure. Our community is the structure of power, the village principle, interdependence over rugged individualism, the intellectual tradition, our logic and reason. Africa is the birthplace of philosophy, the Kemetic mystery schools and their influence on Greek thought, which, as we stated earlier, like George G. James, Stolen Legacy would help us get into African deep thought, like Ptah Hotep's teachings and so forth. Economics and politics, I said politics, I'm sorry. Economics and politics is our power applied, the economic self-determination, ownership of business, land, production, not just consumption, but also, like I said, ownership of it. So the blueprint in action is where each person builds individual study, self-mastery, health, skills, and spiritual discipline, family, the rights, the traditions, the financial literacy, the legacy planning across generations. And, this is some of our things that we need to take hold to help us continue to grow our power, to strengthen ourselves and our bonds and our unity. PAN stands for all. And of course, African is our culture is African, as Dr. Kim was stating earlier. Like, we come from that set of the planet. It might have been as one at the time, Pangea, they might have called it, but that part of the planet is where it all stemmed from. They called it Africa now. So Pan-Africanism is the culture that we should be abiding by, living by. I want y'all, we only have a few minutes. We got to be saying on time is where we go. So I'm speeding through right now, and I apologize because I did have a couple more questions that needed to be asked. But y'all leave final thoughts, please.
Yes. My final thought is, we just got to keep doing what we've been doing. We got to understand that we are in a war. There has been a war that has been waged against us for thousands of years, and we had to basically fight back, for our biological existence and our right, to live a purposeful life on this planet without any types of obstacles or barriers that's going to, kind of diminish anything that we wish to accomplish, not only as individuals, but more importantly, as a people.
I would like to say that Brother said well in conclusion that Pan-Africanism is not a moment or a slogan. It's not a new term for black people to live by. It is daily discipline of unity, self-knowledge, and building. And just to remind us that you can't conquer someone who's already been immune to being conquered. And that is why we exude or express so much of what it means to be resilient. Yes. I invite all to become humans and trade in their beast-like behaviors.
True. Remember, the ancestors gave us the blueprint. Now it's our turn to construct with it. So
yes.
Remember, proper education always corrects error. Peace.
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 Peace.